What's going on, guys? Thank you for watching my channel and watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe below for more content like this. Appreciate it. So when I was writing this episode, I actually thought about an article that I wrote way back in June of 2020. And I wrote a book about, or not a book, an article about men's mental health. I believe it's still up on my Substack. So if anyone wants to, subscribe to my Substack, samlacrosse.substack.com, to go and see, where that is. But I wanted to talk about men's mental health back when it was, before it was cool to talk about men's mental health. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And I don't think I got everything right, obviously. I think I got some things right. I haven't really read the article in a long time. I don't really read my stuff. But this mental health thing specifically for men is a very interesting thing to observe. And it's something that I've struggled with quite a bit, to be honest, in terms of how I've really discussed all these things too. And so one place that I feel has been, one podcast in particular, that was very helpful, and a lot of people understand this, and me understand this, was one that where Chris Williamson, who is normally a podcast host, he is the host of Modern Wisdom, one of the biggest podcasts in the world. He went on to Cameron Haynes' podcast, the Keep Hammering Collective. He went up to Oregon. He did all the lift, run, shoot thing with Cam. And it was one of the best podcasts I have ever listened to, ever. And I would highly, highly recommend that everyone, after they're done listening to my show, obviously, they go and listen to that episode. It's on the Keep Hammering Collective. It's Chris Williamson on it. I believe it's the third episode he ever did. It was a phenomenal podcast. And, you really got, I think, really a big reason, because you really got to know Chris better as a person, because Chris is the interviewer. He's never really on the opposite side of the mic. And so I didn't really know much about Chris. And Chris said all these things about how he was pretty viciously bullied and this, and he was citing all these sources. And I'm like, wow, this is so fascinating. And you see just how much of a transformation he had been through. And Chris is a very, very intelligent person. And so he had many bars in this episode. But the best one, and I think this is where Chris is at his best, is when he stood up for men, which he has for a long time. He's been one of the rare people that has consistently stood up for men's issues, for men's mental health, for men's, overall health, for men's just status in society, all those things. And he had this quote that went really viral afterwards in several clips. I have it saved on my Instagram several times probably, where he says that when talking about men's mental health, women want to be loved and accepted, while men want to feel capable and powerful. And I was like, that's it. That's it. I had never heard someone phrase it that way before. Because that is exactly what the world misses about men's mental health. It's exactly like the school system. So for any women watching, listening, this is what I mean. So the school system is not built for young boys in particular. Young boys are wild, crazy creatures. They're lovely creatures, but they're built to run around and smash into walls and do all these things. They're not meant to be like young girls. Young girls are much more agreeable. They're much more docile. They're much less willing to smash themselves off the walls, and they're a color inside the lines, all those type of things. Young boys are not like that. Now, they should strive to be like that down the line if that's what they're called for, but young boys and men in general are wild, venturing, pioneering creatures. And so the reason why the school system is, particularly in the public schools, have failed young boys is because they have tried, like a lot of other cultural institutions, to make them into women, to make them into girls, by socially engineering the system. And the therapy and mental health complexes are built the exact same way. They are built in complete opposition to what men want to feel. Again, going back to Chris's quote, women want to feel loved and accepted, men want to feel capable and powerful. So let's take the therapy angle on this now. I will tell you firsthand, and every man, if he's very honest, will agree with this, even if he's in therapy, by the way, at first, the most emasculating thing ever that you can do to a man is make him sit on a couch, talk about his feelings, and cry. Nothing makes a man feel less masculine than that. And sometimes men need to do that. I cry. I sit on couches. I talk about my feelings. But to be that the primary way that men deal with their emotions, to hammer it over and over and over and over and over again without anything on the back end to make them feel, as Chris put it, capable and powerful. This is why the social fabric is missing men. And by the way, this is not only a therapy thing. Church, in a lot of ways, is built the same way. Social gatherings are built in the same way. Politics is built a lot in the same way. There's a great book my friend Francis Emelogu told me about once. I still haven't read it, but I've read part of it. Why men don't go to church. It's for this exact reason. Church in the modern era is not built for men. It is built for women and children. The exact same thing with the school system, the exact same thing with therapy. It is built primarily for women. And so men go into therapy, into a traditional therapy session, like, oh, I don't like this. I feel weak. I feel emasculated. I feel icky, whatever they want to say. And it led people like me, a pretty masculine guy, I think, to isolate themselves, to not feel their feelings. And what usually happens with men in isolation is they turn to vices to make them feel capable and powerful, to make them feel like a man, to make them feel masculine, to make them feel something. And Chris Williamson has this other hypothesis that I think is actually very accurate. He calls it the male sedation hypothesis. And what the male sedation hypothesis is that men feel so emasculated by the actual world around them that they're numbing themselves by pursuing those things in the world, but in other areas, which are primarily internet pornography and video games. So men do not feel capable and powerful enough because society has so villainized masculinity and so villainized men. And by the way, men need to take ownership of that, but society has not helped in the longest run, particularly in therapy sessions, mental health, everything in that vector of society. So men do not feel capable in real life. They have been beaten down constantly. They have not been built up at all. So they have given up on seeking adventure in real life. And in the case of internet pornography and video games, finding a woman, living a bold life, living a courageous life, Jordan Peterson calls it having a sense of adventure. And they don't feel supported to do so by anything. No cultural and this is changing, thank God, by the way, but they didn't feel supported to do so. So what they do instead is they sedate themselves with various empty calorie consumption methods, primarily pornography and video games, and other things like, Netflix binge watching or weed or, food, things like that. And that's why basically, and this is where I think we need to draw a very, because I get so angry when people, all these like kind of Karen news ladies and all the commentaries or what, like Olivia Wilde said something about Jordan Peterson that really made me angry once about, the incels or whatever. It's not that the men that fall into this are incels or deadbeats or lazy or by the way, that they're not capable of feeling their feelings. It's that society has been so feminized and so tailored to women, particularly in this space, that it is no wonder why men do not want to open up about anything. Why would they? Why would they? Men don't want to feel like women. Sorry. They don't. And by the way, women don't want to feel like men. It would be like, I had my friend Brian Jameson, he's a wonderful guy at my church. He had a Wild at Heart retreat. John Eldridge wrote a great book called Wild at Heart about Christian masculinity. And he led, I think, a group of probably around, I don't want to overstate this, but like dozens of men out to this place in Central Texas where they went out and they talked about this stuff. And they went out into the woods and they did man stuff and everything like that. Like if you were to say that, okay, women do that, go into the woods and talk about like killing bears and, colonizing the West and everything like that, they'd be like, whoa. And it's like, no wonder they would say, whoa, by the way. No wonder they would say that. Because that would probably close off a lot of women because that's not how women operate. That's not how women operate. So in the inverse, let's go back to men. So when men do not open up about anything, when they see all of this opposition against them, it leads to them, a lot of them, particularly when they're older, because they've been so baked into this, to get heavily addicted to things. Alcohol, drugs, substances, pornography, prostitution, whatever. They isolate many of, like the amount of middle-aged men who are committing suicide, particularly in middle America right now, is staggeringly high. The male suicide rate is 3x that of women. You never hear about that, but it is. And particularly for middle-aged men. I've talked to my dad a lot about this. My dad is not suicidal. My dad is, I think, a pretty happy guy from everything that I've said, and I'm very grateful for that. I love my dad. But I've told him, like, Dad, you gotta be real vigilant about this stuff. Like, you gotta take care of yourself in that way. Like, this is a big problem for men. And until it gets fixed, and until we have repented of this uber feminized way of dealing with your stuff as a man, men are going to continue to suffer. That is 100% what's going to happen. And we should not want our men to suffer. We should want our men to be mentally healthy, because men are leaders, men are pioneers, men are the first in the fray of everything. And if we have a lot of weak men leading that, which we have in many areas for long periods of time, we will continue to see adverse effects on everybody, affecting women and children downstream. Men are made to bless women and children. They're not made to curse them. And if men don't get right in the head with society helping them out a little bit, the same thing will continue to happen.